thanks so much for that introduction. Some of it was true. Some of it was exaggerated. Some of it was left out. Before I get into my 8.5-minute speech, I have to congratulate the young people who are here today. My heart is filled when I saw the children come up and perform with such confidence, such security. I don't see it often. I work in higher education, and the people with whom I am a learning agent usually don't exhibit that kind of confidence. Maybe it has something to do with material last year, who knows. But I just give those children another round of applause. As always, I have to give thanks to God and my understanding, because the Lord bless us all so we can get together today in fellowship. And hopefully, when we leave today, we'll be more encouraged about the things we need to do. I also have to give thanks to the chairperson of the Cultural Committee. I think that's Sister Brenda Griffith. Where are you?
She's in the back.
Okay, she left?
No, she's in the back.
I know some people ate already, they got a little tired.
She's at the door.
Okay. I also give respect to the Reverend Christina Ellis, priest in charge. And I want to thank you for inviting me to speak. And I pray that what I say to be thought-provoking, and that you invite me again. I also wish to offer congratulations to all the prominent women who are being honored today, including my sisterhood, Queens Alumni Chapter Douglas Sigma Theta Incorporated. And it is my hope that the spirit of our beloved ancestor, Assemblywoman Barbara Clark, my friend, who is being honored here today, I hope her spirit is with us. Ashe. Now, before I can get into my remarks, I have to go through a ritual. In my culture, when we come before you to speak, we must always ask permission of the elders. As I look around, I don't see too many people as old as I am. But I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to ask my sister, Hazel Brooks, do I have permission to speak? Thank you. You know, we revere elders because they are living legends. We are because they are. What we know, we learn from our elders. So I am pleased that my elders have given me permission to speak before you. My message today is dedicated to women of courage who have impacted upon my personal life and my civic life. Certainly I must honor my mother first, because she is my first teacher of Black history and life in general. And she's also a mother to many other people in the community. I also wish to dedicate my remarks today to Reverend Dr. Pauline Murray, who some of you may know already. She was the first Black person to be ordained an Episcopal priest. I'm sorry, the first Black woman to be ordained an Episcopal priest. That was in 1977. And she's one of the most pivotal figures in the civil rights movement, the modern civil rights movement. And she laid the groundwork for what we now know as womanist theology. What's interesting about Dr. Pauline Murray is that when she was at Howard University, she wrote a paper, a research paper that was titled Jane Crow and Law. And what many people do not know is that Thurgood Marshall and his friends and his cohorts pulled out her term paper and they used it as a guide to strategize how they would argue the Brown versus Board of Education case. Isn't that wonderful? So you know a woman has something to do with that. I find the two-theme approach to this Women's Day program, working to form a more perfect union, challenging. Honoring women in public service and government. It's challenging because it references in part the preamble to the United States Constitution to form a more perfect union. Oh, by the way, I have no jokes. If you're waiting for a punch, I have no jokes. Usually, when I perform at other places, I have a few life makes the same. This is very, very serious, so just relax. There will be no jokes. It will be very, very serious. As many of you know, the United States Constitution, which is a fundamental framework of America's system of government, was framed and written by James Madison, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson, all of whom were slave owners. And all of them were also pedophiles. These are the ones who signed the United States Constitution. All of them were sexist also. So this was not a rainbow coalition at all. The Constitution has failed to do it as it said it would. Establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves to form a more perfect union. The Constitution, in order to form a more perfect union, thought it best to disenfranchise all persons of African descent and white women too. True, there have been some corrective amendments to the Constitution, but regrettably, more needs to be done to enforce the amendments so we will indeed have a more perfect union. With respect to the second part of the theme, honoring women in public service and government, I'm not going to go the traditional route. Okay? I'm not going to talk about the women. I gave you a program, and there's some interesting women there. I'm not going to talk about them. I have elected comments about women who we seem not to care much about, or that we have forgotten about long ago. Women who have been written out of history. History, his story, not her story, not our story. His story does not honor the women I'm ready to discuss. Brothers and sisters, children too, if we are to honor women in public service, we have to talk about those early women of service to America who were forced to serve under the worst conditions while yearning to be free. The women who I'm going to talk about were forced into labor for life, involuntary servitude, are those black African women who walked out of their home one day to get a breath of air, to tend their garden, to visit friends, or to just go out and be there, and who heard gunshots, smelled smoke, and without warning were kidnapped, stolen from their homes, stolen from their countries without warning. They were bound in chains and shackles and forced marched to dingy slave castles located by the ocean coast to be held there until it was time to board them on the slave ships as human cargo. To set sail on a perilous ocean voyage that lasted for months, eventually to be sold as chattel slaves in the Americas. These women suffered all kinds of sexual abuse during that long, perilous voyage at the hands of the slave ship crew. After surviving the middle passage of the transatlantic slave trade, they were stripped naked and put on auction blocks, some of which are located in what is now known as Wall Street. They were, while chained on auction blocks, these women were poked, they were prodded, they were followed by white men to determine their worthiness to be bought and sold as free laborers in homes, cotton fields, tobacco plantations, agricultural farms, and the like. These are the first women of public service we need to acknowledge, before we acknowledge any other women who have the freedom to choose their life in public service. They did not have a choice. Were it not for the peculiar institution of slavery, there would be no intention to even form a more perfect union. This young country's economic expansion was fueled by the buying and selling of African people and by the wealth that their free labor generated. This country was built on the backs of the free labor slaves. Besides working from dawn to dusk, and actually they worked even longer because of the full moon, they still had to stay out of work. By working from dawn to dusk, not only working from dawn to dusk, the females were sexually exploited by the owners for the owner's pleasure as well as for forced baby breeding. You know what happened during that time, and this is documented. If a man could breed 15 children, he was given special privileges. And if a woman could breed so many children within a structured period of time, she got special privilege. Special privilege might be maybe be a piece of chicken, or maybe an outfit or something. These women had to deliver babies who would eventually live in bondage also. So when I consider women in public service, I have to begin with these female slaves who by constitutional definition were property. Their status as chattel property was reinforced by the Dred Scott Supreme Court decision of 1857, which said, blacks were an inferior order. Blacks were an inferior order. Blacks were an inferior order with no rights, which whites were bound to respect. Were it not for the survival of these women in public service to America, some of whom threw their babies in the river rather than have them live in bondage, if it were not for these women, there would not be a Shirley Chisholm to be the first black woman in this country to run for and win a seat in the Hall of Congress. When Senator Shirley Chisholm, actually I met her once in Brooklyn some time ago. Shirley Chisholm liked to dance, by the way, in case you don't like me, and she could dance. And it's such a contrast to the seriousness she portrayed at other times. Anyway, when Shirley Chisholm had her name placed in nomination for the presidency, she said, oh, by the way, the Gresham Black Caucus, which she helped to found, did not support her, men. When she placed her name in nomination for the presidency, she said, at present, our country needs women's idealism and determination, perhaps more in politics than anywhere else. She was truly unbossed and unborn. If it were not for the survival of these enslaved women, forced in servitude against their will and serving against all odds, there would be no Loretta Elizabeth Lynch serving as 83rd Attorney General of the United States. Nor would there have been a Cynthia McKinney, who unfortunately was ousted from her seat after serving 6 terms in the House of Representatives when she questioned whether the Bush administration was involved in the terrorist attacks, September 11, 2001. And by the way, were it not for the survivors of the earliest form of public service, there would be no pioneers in civil rights, the likes of Amelia Boynton Robinson. Does anyone know who she was? Yes. Okay. Yes. Where did yes come from? Oh, okay. You should be up here talking. Amelia Boynton Robinson, who championed voting rights for African Americans. She was one of the marchers who, along with John Lewis, who got his butt kicked, was brutally beaten for helping to lead that summer civil rights march on the bloody Sunday of March 7, 1965. That's Moore's birthday, right? Okay. Amelia Boynton Robinson was also the first black woman to run for Congress in Albany. Many of us forgot about her until President Obama, so his ceremony of observation of the anniversary of Bloody Sunday last year. Were it not for the survivors of chattel slavery, there would be no Dr. Dorothy Height, the foremost educated and women's rights activist and voting rights activist of her time. She paved the way for others to follow her footsteps after her 98 years of a productive life, and she was lucid until the end. And one of the things about Dorothy Height, if you ever heard her speak, she didn't use notes. See, I bring my notes with me. I don't trust myself. I talk for a living, I do all day long, so I'm going to stick with my notes. There would be no Ida B. Wells and no journalists, suffragette, and civil rights activists to bring international attention to the lynching of blacks in the South and elsewhere, had not these early enslaved women, if they had not survived and given birth and rebirth where we live today. We are because they were. Sometimes people get tired of hearing us talk about slavery. I've heard people of different persuasions say, the days of slavery are over. Get over it. Well, I know Black History Month is over, but we still have to talk about these things. For those of you who think that way, let me remind you that the badges of slavery still exist in government as well as in law enforcement. Am I telling the truth, okay? Where there is unequal application of law. Also, there's a phenomenon known as mental slavery. Remember Bob Marley's song, Reach Yourself in Mental Slavery? Okay. There's also the post-traumatic slavery syndrome, as labeled by Joy Leary, where the residuals of slavery are in operation up to today, March 6, 2016. These brave enslaved women, if they had not survived, we wouldn't have the Fannie Lou Hamer to be sick and tired of putting her life on the line to combat a racist, oppressive system that said black people could not, should not, must not, better not even try to vote for anything, not even a dog catcher. Fannie Lou Hamer was my mother's hero. Fannie Lou Hamer gave away years of her life fighting against voter suppression. As co-founder of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, boy, she worked, oh my God, that woman worked. Has anyone ever seen pictures of her? They usually just show a portrait. They don't show her whole body. But she had been injured when she was younger. She'd been beaten by law enforcement, beaten so bad that it took years from her life. She had sexual harassment also. And matter of fact, when she was younger, people say she didn't have children. She adopted children. But what happened to Fannie Lou Hamer has happened to so many black women in the South and the North. She was hysterectomized at an early age. It was called the Mississippi appendectomy, which means you go into the hospital, you had a stomach ache, they give you anesthesia. And some of the young children did not know until they were adults that they had suffered a hysterectomy. Fannie Lou Hamer helped to organize the 1964 Freedom Summit in Mississippi, a campaign sponsored by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Congress of Racial Equality, and the NAACP. All this by Mississippi women. The blood of these early enslaved African women flows through the veins of Ella Baker, she was behind the scenes kind of organized. As many of you know, one of the challenges of the civil rights movement in early time, as well as later time, it was gender bias. It was gender bias. Remember Myrlie Evans, what happened to her at one vote? That, as a matter of fact, I remember Sophie Carmichael in his young foolish years said, does anyone know what he said? He's the only place for a woman in the movement is underneath the man.
Oh my goodness.
Well, he lived to regret saying that. He apologized. He apologized, that he apologized more than just sway. Ella Baker, again, was someone who was behind the scenes quite often and could have done more if her gender had allowed it. Joanne Robinson was an English professor at an all-black college who was part of the Women's Political Council, helped plan and launch the Montgomery bus boycott. Joanne Robinson organized a city boycott of black citizens after Rosa Parks had been arrested for challenging the city segregation law. We are told that the Montgomery March changed the entire course of the civil rights movement in America. What I like to say is that women did that. Women did that. You all hear me, Brother Conrad? Women did that. And I would go so far to say there would be no Martin Luther King going to the mountaintop to talk about this nightmare of integration had it not been for the women. Can I get an amen? About time you said amen. I sincerely hope, and pray that our attorney, journalist, news commentator, Melissa Harris Perry, and that the newly elected Assemblywoman, Alicia Hyman, know that the shoulders they stand on were born over 400 years ago. As I close, I timed myself, so I got a few more minutes. I want you to know that God spoke to me this morning. I know when you hear the voice of God, you certainly have to listen. When I felt the presence of God, I knew everything would be in divine order today. I'm pleased to see so many of you out here. I'm glad you didn't fall asleep after that nice meal. But what I need you to know is what I said to you today what I said to you today are not my words, they're not my thoughts, although they are my feelings. Anything I said to you today was sent to me by our ancestors. Actually, I have no original thoughts or ideas, just feelings. And I always look back to my ancestors for direction. How do we form a more perfect union? This is the question. How do we form a more perfect union? Well, to form a more perfect union, you have to acknowledge that the union isn't perfect. Okay, that's the first thing. In therapy, they tell us, before you can solve a problem, you have to acknowledge you got a problem. You have to acknowledge you're a thief, you're lying, whatever problem you have. So we have to acknowledge that the union is not perfect. That is far from perfect. Our union is in a sickening state. As Sandra Bland, Eleanor Bumpus. You know they took Eleanor Bumpus out. Lucky they still know that, right? That's another speech. This is far from perfect, particularly as it relates to the poor and ethnic minorities. So the first step in the healing process is to recognize the sickness of what it is, and then having the intention, the sincere desire to reverse it, to correct it, and to erase the symptoms and variables associated with illness. This is a union that is weakened by racism, sexism, ergophobia. You know, ergophobia, you're scared of language, you don't like anything. Homophobia, religious intolerance, and the like. That's what we have here. This is a system that's weakened by the so-called community leaders who sell out the community to hush money and shut down. Right. We're talking to you, Lord. He's good to us. Right, Lord? Right. Yes. When you have some colleagues, okay, you need to be booted out of office. When we hold our leaders accountable to our needs, then we are on our way to beginning to make things perfect. How to form a more perfect union? We must take a more active part in selecting the people who will actually run for office, rather than casting ballots for candidates who were chosen by somebody else. I'm trying to figure out why do people go to the polls like puppets on time to pull the lead for somebody they didn't have anything to do with. Okay? We've got to come out of that, particularly those who look like us. We've got to make our leaders more responsible. We've got to make our ministers more responsible. Yeah. We've got to make our block captains more responsible. We have to believe that we have a right for perfection. So when we talk about forming a more perfect union, so that we will all have equal protection of the law, we'll all have full rights to citizenship, we have to look at ourselves. We have to look at ourselves and the company we keep. How responsible are we? Are we willing to do the thing that we need to do? Are we willing to spend the money to do the things we need to do? Are we willing to close our pocketbooks and put our wallets away in order to do the things we need to do? Are we willing to keep spending money at places who have nothing to do with us? Are we willing to keep sending money out of our community? Unfortunately, if you know the statistics, money stays in our community a few minutes. Yeah. Are we willing to change the things we do? Some people say, well, what did that got to do with anything? People respect you when you respect yourself. People will treat you right when you behave in a secure, proud, independent, self-centered manner. I'm going to finish in 1 minute. One of the great legislators I spoke with once, I confronted this person on something. And they sat me down quick. They said, where were you all when I needed you? Where were you all when I needed you? So I think it's very, very important, as I close, to look back in our history. Look at the people who we may have forgotten. Consider those in our history, even if we don't know their names, consider the roles that they played. Look at where we are today. Look at where we were in terms of employment, healthcare, economics, education. Look at where we are now and where we were 20, 40, 50 years ago. We have not gone up. We haven't even held the line. I'm not a sports person, but I know what holding the line means. So I say to you, as my mother would say, you know what you have to do. Go and do it. Stop shucking and jiving. It's been my pleasure to speak with you today, and I'm glad I put you by the sleep. And congratulations again to Harmony.